Dear colleagues, I'm happy to contribute with the topic of wooden vernacular architecture in Finland and Finnish Sápmi. The idea behind this was analyzing the connection of the livelihood and the life cycles, and with this I hope to find insights for contemporary architects to develop more sustainable design approaches. But first, here's some general overview. Finland, as we know it today, is not very old, with its 106 years, and it was in the past culturally influenced both from the west, where Sweden, and from the east, where is Russia. And at the same time, the indigenous Sámi inhabited the north part of Fennoscandia with a gradual migration towards the north in the course of time. In the right map there, you can see the languages spoken in Finland today. And there are two official languages in Finland, which are, of course, Finnish and also Swedish. And the third most spoken language in Finland is Russian. And there are also several official minority languages in Finland, of which 3 variants of Sámi in the area of Sápmi, which is the red area seen on the map. But this is not the only Sápmi area. There's also Swedish Sápmi, Norwegian Sápmi, and one area in Russia. And they all have more languages of Sápmi. Well, when I'm talking about Sámi area in this presentation, or Sápmi, I will refer to this red area and not to Sweden or Norway or Russia. And well, when we look at the language, we can already see how Finland was influenced culturally, politically, and this not only happens to the languages, but also to the people and of course to the vernacular architecture. Equally influential to Finland is the local factors, such as the climate, especially when we look at the area above the Arctic Circle. The tree growth is limited beyond the Arctic tree line, which creates in the north mountain tundra, and of course that also has an influence on the availability of building resources. And such local factors also have influence on the diverse image and the appearance of the vernacular architecture across Finland. Well, let's look into the local traditions and the livelihood, which influence the lifespan and the life circle of vernacular architecture. And when I talk about the life circle, I mean everything starting from, well, the material extraction and the construction and the use of the building and the repair of the building, and also part of the life cycle is of course the end of the life and the waste treatment. So those 3 examples I chose here are vernacular dwelling types. The first one is a gorti, the second is a turf hut, and the last one is a log cabin. And the first 2 examples are commonly built in Sápmi, and the last example can be found all over Finland, which also includes Sápmi. And all of those examples were built between the 16th century, which is the end of the Finnish Middle Ages, and the 1860s, which is round about the beginning of the industrialization in Finland. And when you look at those examples, please keep in mind that they did not appear successively, but they existed simultaneously and can be also occur detached or as settlements or with several outhouses. The first example is a gorti, which is a portable dwelling structure used in Finnish Sápmi, and it was used by reindeer herding Sámi since the 15th century. And the livelihood of reindeer herding Sámis included following the seasonal patterns of the reindeer migration. That means a seasonal moving between the summer and the winter grazing ground. As you can see in the picture or in the photography, this kind of dwelling is used in summer island grazing grounds and is not used as a permanent dwelling, but it is temporary. A gorti was assembled with a few materials which all can be found in the treeless tundra of the summer grazing grounds. These are, for example, the wooden poles, which are forming the rib of the structures. Stones are needed for the campfire, and tent cloth or reindeer hide are needed as an outer cover with one or multiple layers depending on the weather. And also reindeer hide and birch, the dwarf birch branches were used as a ground insulation inside of the guarti. So that means due to the little amount of required materials, the guarti has a very short assembly time and was designed to take in along, and that means also to be reused many times. So that means that the building life cycle is not only extended by reuse, but also through quick repair and replacement of the building parts. Now in the top right, the picture has changed, and there we can see a lavu, which is a structurally smaller version of a guarti. And this tipi-like tent can be found in way more indigenous cultures, for example, in Northern America or in Russia. So with this example of a guarti and a lavu, we can see how much the livelihood has changed and the architecture is different compared to our contemporary lifestyle, since like most of us are living in permanent dwellings and were then immobile dwellings, so they can't move. That also means that our mindset has changed during the course of time, and of course also the building regulations. Now that we have seen the guarti at the summer dwelling in Sápmi, let's take a look at the winter grazing ground for reindeer herding Samis, which is at the coast. This is a turf hut, which was commonly used, and it's an immobile version of the guarti, and it's a semi-permanent settlement. That means that you can see here the floor plan. It's quite similar than a guarti, but especially the material choice of the roof is different. The coastal regions of Sápmi have more building material to offer than the mountain tundra, including higher insulating, waterproof and waterproofing material. The structures of a turf hut is based on this same rib-like structure than a guarti, but then covered with another outer layer. On top of those wooden structure is first applied wooden planks as an inner layer, then birch bark as a waterproof or water sealing material, and then mossy forest ground were placed on top, sometimes even fastened with wood or logs. The lifespan of this kind of dwelling depends on the availability and depletion of the resources in the surroundings, like firewood. That means that the settlement were abandoned after some decades when no firewood was available anymore. That is why this is why it's a semi-permanent dwelling or not a permanent dwelling. Another aspect of the turf hut that it's a fully bio-based. It has fully bio-based elements, and well, they are fully bio-based, but they were compared to a guarti not moved along and reused, but they were meant to decay after leaving the settlement behind. Here you can see the archaeological findings in Sápmi between the 7th and the 20th century. What you can only see are campfire remains, or as the last picture show, the picture number D, letter D, which is the turf hut foundation. So both the guarti and the turf hut did not leave any permanent traces in the surrounding after its use, since the building parts were either taken along or left to decompose. This especially shows of the indigenous cultures how respectful they were interacting with the surroundings. And if we reflect this to contemporary architecture, we can see that, like, shouldn't this be our aimed impact on the surroundings instead of leaving concrete foundations and concrete ruins? So the previous examples, both of them were dwelling types of the livelihood of reindeer herding Samis, but the total pictures is way more diverse. There are also forest Samis and fishing Samis, and they not only live, as I mentioned before, in the regions of Finnish Sápmi, but also in Sweden, Norway, and Russia. That actually means that many more dwelling types developed, which are also subtypes and mixed types. Those can, for example, be a log turf hut, a peat hut, or a log cabin. And all of them, which are shown here, start to appear in the 18th and 19th century. So what you can see here is the main difference is that there's a new building material emerging, which is logs, and well, used to build log frame structures. The first example would be here to the right, which is a log cabin, which is a very low building, well, constructed with logs. And the picture on the left shows a log turf hut, which is a combination of the log cabin and the turf hut. That means it has like a 3 or 4 log foundation, and then the same rib-like structure of a gorti of a turf hut on top. And the picture to the left, those kind of hut was used also by reindeer herding Sámis in the 18th, from the 18th and 19th century on. But then when everything else was left to decay, they still took along the logs. So they reused them on the next settlement. And the picture in the middle shows another building type emerging. It's guarti, game or peat hut, which has not log frame structure, but it's well, it's a bigger version again of a guarti, but in this case it was permanent. So it had 2 rooms, a chimneyed fireplace, and windows in the moss-covered walls. The main or the interesting fact about this the peat hut is a permanent dwelling, so that also shows a change in the livelihood. But what was then, when we see all of this, that log was emerging and permanent dwelling were like increasing, so what was then the point, or like the reason why it was changing in Sápmi? And the change was that log frame structures in Sápmi appeared through interaction with non-indigenous cultures, like for example merchants coming to Sápmi, who built churches and log house dwellings in Sápmi during the 18th century. This then brought the change in livelihood. In the 18th century, first farms were founded in Sápmi, and the ownership of livestock increased, which also increased the reason why permanent settlements were founded. The log houses were new in Sápmi, but for most Finns in the rest of Finland, this was the most common dwelling type. And this is called a log house, and it's built since the Iron Age until the middle of the 19th century. It was the most common dwelling type in this time. This log house was used in historical times for sleeping, household chores, cooking, baking, while practicing the livelihood of a fisher or a farmer. And this log house can look very diverse as well. There are 1-room type of a log house, also 2-room type or multiple room types, and those room types, like the rooms, were in the middle or in the center of the building, then connected with a porch and a milk chamber. And on the picture to the right, you can see that in Western Finland, the log house can also be 2-storied. The timber log frame principle consists of horizontally stacked logs, which are joined in the corners, resting on granite stone foundation, and they're covered by a wooden gable roof. Here you can see examples of the foundation and roof types, and especially the appearance of the joints can be very diverse, depending on the time and region. This log frame structure is a very modular building method, which gives the possibility to extend the buildings. And also not only extending, but also replacement of damaged logs, or partial reuse of the elements, or even relocate the whole building, because it's modular. So now introducing to Sápmi, or in general using this in Finland, the log frame structure enables this very long-lasting building life cycles for permanent dwellings, always through replacement and reuse. Additionally, the buildings were, or the facade, or the the durability of the facade can be increased through cladding or through red ochre paint, which is applied on top of the logs or the cladding. And but now that we go further into the building types and the timeline, we see that not only bio-based materials were used, but also gradually other kind of materials were introduced, such as mineral-based materials, which are used in brick and mortar for the ovens, or glass for the window panes. And also metal-based materials for hinges and locks increased. That means that using all of this kind of material means that there are longer supply chains behind the elements, which include even mining or transportation routes, and which also increase the waste production of non-decayable material. Well, beside that, however, the architecture was still mostly made of local and regrowing bio-based material. Those kind of dwellings of the log house could have around up to 20 gradual added log frame outhouses, all of them with a different use. There could be, for example, a personal storage building, a granary, a pigsty, stable, cowshed, and a sauna, of course, boathouses, and many more. And they were all arranged around a fenced yard. Here marked that the yard can either be open, as shown in the picture to the left and bottom right, or how it was especially in Western Finland in rectangular shape. Anti-Farmstead, which is an example seen to the top right, has two inner closed yards and one outer yard. And this inner, like the closed yards, one of them was a yard for people and the other one was for animals. So when you take a closer look at the buildings, you see that not only the main building has a chimney, but there are multiple buildings with a chimney, and that means that there are also multiple heated buildings in this yard. So other heated buildings could be, for example, a sauna, a summer cooking shed, a threshing barn, or a tar pit, which is not really a building, but it was still heated for multiple weeks. And sometimes even the cowshed was heated. And that does not even show that you need a lot of huge quantity of building material, but you also need huge quantities for fuel wood or firewood during the whole lifespan of a farm. And keeping this in mind, that asks for responsible resource management to avoid depletion. Thinking about depletion and reflecting on it compared to our current lifestyle shows that we managed to shift from facing a possible depletion of regrowing resources in the local surrounding to a global depletion of all resources. Lastly, the livelihood of farmers brought a higher alteration of the surrounding with it. There you can see on the left or right that the slash and burn cultivation was common to transform the forest, to transform forests to fertile farming soil, and also swamps were drained to provide more dry land to build and cultivate on. Well, however, if you compare this to contemporary building activities, those have nowadays a huge impact on the natural surroundings. For example, by building basements or building tunnels, and those extreme actions were absent in the past building process. So, to conclude, of course, the lives and livelihoods were different in the past compared to nowadays, but what we can see is a change in our mindset during the course of time, which is very contradicting to the way we are thinking right now. And it is clear that we can't continue building like we do today, but perhaps thinking about the building life cycles and the livelihood can help to develop more sustainable design approaches, or maybe at least you think about your home country's heritage and their building life cycles. Thank you.